Hey there, everybody. This is Kenny. Welcome back to another edition of the Leading from the Middle podcast. This is the podcast for middle managers who want to develop themselves, develop their teams, and improve their results. I got to talk to the leader that is bringing Formula One performance to organizations. He's also a speaker, a consultant, and a facilitator. Paul Teasdale joined me. And yes, when we're talking about Formula One, yes, that Formula One. So, what are some leadership lessons that Paul has brought to organizations from his time with Formula One? How can he make it applicable? What about decision making skills in the fast paced world of Formula One? And how can that relate to the fast paced world that you live in right now? We talked about career development, a whole bunch of other things. You don't want to miss a second of this. Let's get at it.
This episode is brought to you by Kitcaster. Kitcaster books you on top podcasts. How do funded startup founders attract prospects and talent? Podcast interviews. How do entrepreneurs with exits find new deals? Podcast interviews. How do C-suite execs differentiate in crowded markets? Podcast interviews. Kitcaster books you on top podcasts. Click the link in the show notes for a special offer. Celebrate good conversation.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Leading from the Middle podcast. I have a tremendous leader today that is really going to talk about leadership from a little bit of a different perspective, and I think you're going to find it fascinating. He's just doing phenomenal work. So I just want to get right to him. He is the leader that is bringing Formula One performance to your organization. Speaker, consultant, and facilitator, Paul Teasdale has joined me today. Paul, it is so great to have you on. How you doing today, sir?
I'm very good. Thanks for having me, Kenny. It's a real privilege.
Oh, thank you. The privilege is mine for sure. I want to jump right in, and your backstory is amazing. And so I'd like for you to tell the audience your backstory and what led you to do what you're doing now. But there's something also about sausages in your backstory, but I'll let you talk about that.
Yeah, I've had an interesting journey, put it that way. I'm probably I'm probably one of the only people who've managed repairing and overhauling aeroplane engine parts, sausage making, international shipping, banking, and then a move into Formula One and beyond. So yeah, I'm an engineer by trade and training, and I've always gone into that performance improvement element of it. And had the opportunity in early stages to work in a sausage factory over here in the UK. Did some production management for a couple of years. Learned some real lessons about leading people in particular and leading teams. And from there, I've had all sorts of opportunities. And I've always just taken the opportunities that have come my way. I've made a couple happen of my own accord, shall we say? But yeah, I've taken a few opportunities. Worked in the world of consulting for a while. And when me and the wife decided that we were going to move out of London and the sort of the rat race of working as a consultant that I'd done for 5 years, we ended up moving to New Zealand. And yeah, a bit of a change for us. And said 2 years maximum we'll go out there. Working for a big dairy company, I managed to get an opportunity over there. And it turned out that 5 years later we were still there. We had a little Kiwi boy in our midst, and it was at that point, having gone through working for this big dairy company, this multinational, helping them make sort of billion-dollar decisions on where they put their milk, was my role within all of that, and was made redundant due to a big shake-up there, and took a role in banking, and real sideways step, helping them to improve their performance and improve their systems and processes in that space. And did that for a good couple of years, was having a great time, and then decided we're going to move back to the UK. And one thing I'd learned from moving out to New Zealand was if you are going to make a big move like that, you've got to have things in place for you and the family to mitigate those risks of regretting your decisions. So I had an opportunity to come back and work for another bank, doing a very similar role in a very similar part of the UK where I'd grown up, so I knew it well. And I was like, well, it pays kind of well. It's a good move. It's solid. I'll be close to some of the family, all the rest of it. But it's not exciting me. And
Mm.
that's when an opportunity through a friend of mine came around working for McLaren, the Formula One and automotive team over here. And yeah, I got introduced to their what they called at the time McLaren Applied Technologies, where they were taking their ways of working, their methodologies, and some of their technologies out to wider businesses. And my role was to be I guess, the consultant, going and working with external organizations to say, here are some of the lessons that you can learn from F1.
Mm.
Here are some of the high performance lessons, some of them around the technologies that we had, although some of that technology went way over my head. Some really clever people working there.
Right.
But it was always about the practices and the processes and the methodologies where I came in and helping people with the decision making and decision support element, but also with the leadership. How do you integrate some of these technologies for overall performance? And I
Mm.
did that for about 6 or 7 years, had an amazing time. And due to other circumstances, I've gone independent, and I now help organizations with all of that experience. I focus on the F1 a lot because
Yeah.
people latch onto that. It's a sort of
Yeah.
nice shiny thing that and some real high performance lessons there. But I also integrate a few of those sausage making lessons and banking and all sorts in between as well.
I mean, that is an amazing journey, Paul. I so much I want to unpack now with you. That just man, oh man, I'm blown away by it. Um, Formula One, I would assume is just as popular there as it is here. I mean, it's crazy popular here.
Yeah.
But I also think if I just mention Formula One to someone here, they don't automatically associate that with anything leadership related.
Hmm.
So, tell us about some of those leadership lessons and some of the things that you talk about with your clients today. What were some leadership lessons that you got from Formula One?
Well, the thing about Formula One is it's the pinnacle of high performance when it comes to motorsport,
Yes.
and therefore in a lot of sports analogies and that sort of high level, absolute elite level sporting achievement, it also has the ability to tie in some of the technology side of it, and how do you integrate technology with what's essentially a decision making process. You've got to execute with your driver, but there's a huge team that goes around making decisions, and there's a lot of operational challenges and opportunities there. But in order to make that stuff really work, you've got to have a leadership approach and a leadership team who are focused on the right things and are supportive of their team to make decisions.
Mm.
And there's a sort of couple of key lessons that came out to me that always shine through from reflecting on those days. One of them was we'd always talk about decisions at the point of most knowledge. So if you put yourself in this scenario, you are at a Formula One race. You've got about 2 minutes to go before the race starts, and one of your cars isn't starting. It's due to be on the grid, and you've currently got an engineer literally underneath the car with his spanners trying to fix the problem, trying to understand what's going on. At the time, one of our senior leaders is standing there in the pit lane, and he's with a client, and a senior client that's standing next to him. He says, well, "Why are you so calm? This is make or break. You can lose millions just on this moment here if he gets this car going or not." And one of our leaders was like, "Well, that's not my job. My job in this moment is to make sure that that person is doing what we've trained them to do, that they've got the tools, they've got the all of the things around them, and they've got the trust in themselves to make decisions. Because I can't make a decision as to what to do with that car right now. I haven't got enough time. I haven't got the expertise.
Mm.
So my job is
Mm.
to make sure that that person is doing their job and to watch what's happening. Because there's another great phrase that came through it, which is look for the eyes.
Look for the
If
eye.
you're
Okay.
Yeah, if you're in that high pressure moment and everything is a bit chaotic, where are your team naturally looking to? Who are the people in that situation where your team are going, physically looking at that person, looking for a bit of help and support?
Hmm.
And as a leader, if you can be watching what your team are doing, where their eyes are going, who are they looking to, who are they asking for help, those are real leaders in your organization.
Mm.
They might not have the title, they might not have the seniority, but if you can spot that, you can nurture it and you can bring that through, because that's a real natural X factor that those people have.
Paul, that's fascinating. There's so many thoughts running through my head, and it so comes down to leadership at any level. I mean, a lot of our
Mm,
audience are middle managers, but what you just talked about really can hit hard at any level. Look into the eyes. I love that.
mm.
Um, I want to expand a little bit on that as because that's a fast. There's probably no more fast-paced world than
No.
the one. No pun intended, right? But
Yeah.
I can imagine the pit stops and everything like that was going so fast. How do you get leaders or how do you talk to leaders about slowing down just a bit? Because what I find fascinating in that story is that you've got leaders that it's fast. Hey, we got to do this in seconds, 2 minutes, we got to be up there. But yet they're slow enough to let's look in their eyes, let's make sure they have everything. And
Yeah.
and that can't be easy. How do you what is some advice you have for leaders to in order for them to slow down?
Mm. It's a real challenge, and it's a great question as well. It's one of the key things is to get people to really reflect on what their job is, and particularly if they've come through as a manager, young manager, middle manager into a leadership role, no matter what level that role is now. If you're a leader, you're no longer doing the job you used to.
Mm,
What is your job in those leadership moments? And if people still think that their job is to do the work, then they're not a leader. They are a well-paid practitioner in some ways.
yeah,
And probably you've got to also reflect on the fact and help people realize that that is probably doing a lot more harm than good. If you're trying to step in, if you're trying to micromanage and you're trying to do the work because you think the time pressure's there and because you think I can do it better than the person who's less experienced, hasn't been there before, but I'm going to step in. I'm going to do it just this one time. It's always just this once. But actually, you are causing more harm than good there. And if you can
yeah,
get people to reflect on that and realize that actually your job as a leader is to make sure that people are prepared for those moments, to help them through the moment, and to make sure they reflect and do a debrief off the back of it as well, so you capture the learnings. And
yeah.
that's a critical element to it.
Yeah, yeah. I'm so glad you added that in because
Mm,
that's one of those things that leaders tend to forget, right? What
mm,
let's circle back and talk about what I know circle back is a cliche, but let's talk about what happened. Let's debrief that.
mm.
Let's do it as soon as we're through this. Let's I'm gonna take some notes down. We'll sit down and talk about it. I love that. I want to give some equal time because you did mention that you have some leadership lessons from your days at making sausages. What would
Yeah.
be one or two things that you picked up from that part of your career?
Well, that was my second role out of university.
Uh,
I was relatively old coming out of university, certainly from a UK perspective. I was about 24 going into my first role. I took a year out before uni, took a 4 year course, which is not typical over here. And then, yeah, but I was still very wet behind the ears, very wet behind the ears. And I went into that role in the sausage making plant thinking that I knew it all because I had a degree and I had the master's degree in engineering. I knew all what it should be. And so one of the first things I did, I had a team assigned to me straight away called the Meat Prep. And these are the guys, it was a team of about 6 guys who had previously been butchers when the site had been like a butchery site as well as the sausage production. And they made up the recipes for the day. So they got the meat, got the spices, made it all up, blended it all up, and sent it off to the line. Now I came in, I barely said a word. Literally had a clipboard out, taking notes, watching them, and I got them in at the end of the day. And I said, "Great news, guys! I'm going to make you more productive. We're just going to need to change some of your breaks, and instead of you two going to break together, and this needs to happen. And by the way, we need to start at a slightly different time. And whoa, you can imagine how well that went down. Um, and I learned a lesson very quickly.
yeah.
And luckily, I did learn the lesson, and I apologized and stepped back and said, "Right, what can we learn from that?" And on reflection, and with some help, some coaching and support there, it all came back to sort of two key things that I talk about a lot. Be humble and be kind.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
be humble in terms of you can't assume that you know any more than anybody else in that room. In fact, you should assume you know far less than everybody else in that room.
Hmm.
And be kind because if you go in with the assumption that people aren't trying to do their best, or if they, you're there, you found a better way, and you're the one who's going to impose it on them. That's not being kind to people. That's not being humane and having an aspect of humanity about you.
Yeah.
So go in and have the conversation, talk about what you want to achieve, understand the challenges that are in the way, and just be humble and listen to the great ideas that people have got. You don't have to be the ideas person to be a leader.
Yeah. Wow. That's so much said there. And I'm laughing at the story a little bit, chuckling to myself. Here you are. All right, you guys, the breaks are gonna be, and they're probably like, look, the new guy's gonna tell us when we're taking our break. Come on. Um, but what a great lesson, and how important that is for leaders, especially like you said, new leaders,
Mhm.
that should be stepping into a new role. Um, I want to come back to decision making skills because you've got a lot of great things on your website as well
Mm.
about processes on making really sound decisions. And I've heard a lot of people say, throw some of the data out. You embrace data, but you're also talking a lot of, common sense. But it's also, I'm still so fascinated in this fast-paced world. So talk to us a little bit about what advice would you give for managers these days to make really, really sound decisions?
Um, so when it comes to decision making, and a lot of these lessons come from the world of F1, as you say, fast paced, high impact, high profile decisions. If you're deciding when you're going to pit a car, that can be, that decision can mean a position on the grid, on the podium, or you've fallen behind your competition. It can literally be millions of pounds, millions of dollars
Mm-hmm.
if you get that thing wrong. And so you've got to be good at making decisions, and you've got to be good at making data supported decisions. Now, if you're purely doing data led or fully automated decisions where the data plugs in and an answer comes out the other end, then that's not a decision, that's just automation.
Mm.
And there are some circumstances where it's a simple if this then that automation is fine.
Mm-hmm.
But most businesses, and particularly when you throw people involved, you know it's not that simple, and there's
Mm.
complexity.
Yeah.
So what you can do is think about how you're going to have better data supported decisions. And one of the key things, the counterintuitive lesson I learned in F1, is to put data last.
Wow. Okay.
A lot of people, in fact, some clients came to us and said, we've just invested 10, 15 million euro in this case, because it was over in Europe, um, on a new factory, automating our factory. We've got new servo motors everywhere. All of the production lines have cameras, and it's collecting all this data. The only problem is we're not getting any more performance out of it.
Mm.
And I think what you're doing is you've started with data first, and you said more data equals better performance. Now, if you think about an F1 car, you can get more data from a car. You just have to put more sensors on.
Mm-hmm.
And more sensors come with more weight, and more weight comes with less performance.
Mm.
So you've got to have this return on investment view on the data that you're asking people to consume and to produce.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to thinking about this from an individual's or a team's perspective, that cognitive load, if you're adding more and more data into the equation, more and more data, more and more information, the sort of reports, oh, here's another report, here's a new system, here's Tableau or Power BI, where you can cut the data any way you want. It's fantastic. Most managers, most middle leaders, they haven't got time to think about that.
Right.
And
Right.
it's just like, I've got so much cognitive load happening already to ask me even to think about what question am I going to ask? And this is the same with AI. What question am I going to ask? That takes
Yeah.
a lot of thought and a lot of sort of time and effort to get to. So
Yeah.
I developed this framework. I love a good framework. I call it rapid performance. So understand first and foremost your results that you're trying to drive. Be very clear on that.
Mm-hmm.
Understand the actions that you have at your disposal that have an impact on those results. The people. So who are the people involved in making decisions and putting them into play? The I is for insights. So what insights will help people make a better decision? And D is for data. And this is what's the smallest possible data set to derive the insights that I need in order to make better decisions.
Wow.
And that insights layer is the one where I see so many people mixing up data and information with insights. I'm going to give you more data. I'm going to give you more info. Don't give me that. Give me insights. Help me make a decision by presenting things in a way that supports a decision being made.
Yeah, I love that. And rapid turned out to be so good because the D is at the end, and
Yeah.
and you have the data there at the end. Um, that is such a great model. Leaders take that, rewind it back, make sure you're listening to that again, and hopefully you'll get to connect with Paul and find out more from going to his site. But that just makes so much sense to me in this day and time where we have so much coming at us, and we have it a little bit backwards, right? We think that we've got to rely on the data first. That's
Yeah.
what we have to do. And wow, that is fantastic. I love that. I got to get your advice on career development. And as you were talking through your career, you were very, very aware. I love that you said, "Hey, this is a well-paid job. I kind of like it, but it's not exciting me." It
Mm,
seems like you were very aware of your own career throughout every step.
mm.
Um, how do leaders start to plan their careers out at a very, very early age?
I mean, it's a difficult one in terms of I've never been a detailed planner in that space because I think things change so often and opportunities come your way that you would never expect.
Yep.
But if you've got guiding principles and you've got some thoughts behind when I do have to make a decision, how do I make that decision in the moment? And from a career perspective, I mean, biggest advice I can give is get a coach or get somebody who can help you, and that doesn't have to be a professional coach. It can be a trusted advisor, a friend who's going to challenge your thinking and just test whether or not you're making good decisions and ask you some good questions.
Mm.
But there's a couple of things that have come out with my career. One was get a coach. The other was make some positive moves. A lot of people ask me, how do I get into F1? Well, nobody gets into F1 really by just going, oh, I'll apply to a job. I saw it advertised and I'll apply and I'll be one of the hundreds of thousands of people who apply for that role.
Right.
You've got to stand out. And it's the same in any role. When I moved out to New Zealand, for instance, I knew I was moving out to New Zealand, or we wanted to move out in New Zealand. We were thinking of this. I looked up who are the big companies out there, who are the sort of people who seemed to be a fit to me, and I literally knocked on the door. I was there just before Christmas, around this sort of time when we're recording things here. What would have been about 14 years ago or so,
Wow.
and I literally went into the head office and said, I'm here over the Christmas and New Year period. I'm seeing some family. And I think I'd like to work for you. And I think you'd get a lot of value from me. Can I have a meeting with somebody in HR or somebody who can talk to me just for half an hour just to see if there's a fit here?
Yeah. Wow.
And
Wow.
there wasn't a role being advertised. There wasn't anything there. It was just a case of tell me about what you do. I'll tell you what I'm all about. And that's the sort of thing stands out. And so when a role did come about, they contacted me and said, "We've got this role. Do you fancy it?" And then it all went from there.
Wow. Wow.
But yeah, take some positive steps. If you want to make a move, if you're looking to make a move, then make it happen for yourself.
Yeah.
And then the final bit, the bit that has really helped me in the big decisions in life and career development being one of them, is I got introduced to a tool called the Personal Shield, which a friend of mine and a coach of mine introduced me to, which is all about what's your history, what's your backstory, what are your values, what are your passions, and what do you want from your future. And you sort of lay them out like a medieval shield, and drawing it out is actually the best way to do it because it makes you be a bit more creative in terms of how you articulate it. Even if you can't draw for a jot like me, you scribble with stickmen figures, and talk that through. Because when it comes to a decision, invariably there will be a compromise to be had. So when I was looking at those roles, the role in banking back in the UK, if I looked at the future side of it, that probably had more of the stable, probably better pay. So what I wanted for my future, from stability and the sort of health and wealth of the family, that probably ticked a lot of boxes there. But it didn't really tick my passions, and it wasn't offensive, but it also wasn't ticking a lot of boxes in the value side, So it was like yeah, it's okay there. It's not that good here. It's not. So what am I willing to compromise on?
Yeah.
Because you have to compromise. It's
Yeah.
very, very rare that you do.
Yeah.
But if you've got those things in your mind as to, I'm going to compromise on that over that because that's the right decision right now for me. And
Yeah.
that can be applied to any sort of work situation as well. So
Yeah.
have those things in mind in terms of what are the principles and practices that make a difference to you that you're going to base your decisions on.
That's priceless advice. And I love the boldness of going and knocking on a door and saying, "Hey, I'm here. I want to talk to somebody." And I know you don't have a job opening, but I think that's so awesome. This is my last question for you, Paul, and my last one will be asking how folks can connect with you. What do you do to develop yourself every day? As I read more and more about you, you're such a well-rounded leader. You're great at data, great with people, great at decision. But there's got to be something you do every day that keeps you developed and on the cutting edge of things. What are some things you do every day to develop yourself?
Yeah, well, I'm a big connector of people. I read the occasional book. There's some great leadership books out there. I have to confess, to me, it takes a long time to get through a book.
Yeah.
So I prefer audio, or most of all, I prefer talking to people face to face. I started a podcast of my own a year or so ago called Helping People Perform, where I talk to people who help others perform at their best, and that for me, love to share the messages out with the audience, but for me, the sort of greedy element of it really is that inspires me because I see how different people are coming at things from a different angle. And one of the things that I really like to do is connect the dots between what seems to be, non-competing areas. So sausages and banking and Formula One and oil and gas drilling was
Yeah.
one of them that I did as well. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Wow. Wow. I love that. Yeah, and that's a little bit of a secret for myself too. I develop every time I speak to a leader like yourself because I've gained so much, from you. I love that. Um, so Paul, how can people connect with you and get to learn more about what you do?
So the best way is to go to my website, which is paulteasdale.co.uk. So that's paulteasdale.co.uk. So over here in the UK, and yeah, one of the first things you'll get there, set up a free 30-minute chat. You more than welcome to connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'm there on Instagram as well. But yeah, LinkedIn, I do a lot of posting there. But if you want to connect, if you just want to chat, if you want to hear more, if you just want to see or tell me about how this has inspired some thinking for yourself, or you want to challenge me and ask me some further questions, please just set up that free 30 minutes and we'll have a chat and see where it goes from there.
Oh, that's awesome. That is awesome. And I'm sure some people are going to take you up on that after listening to this. So, Paul,
Please
you
do.
are amazing. This was an amazing conversation. You gave so much. Thank you for telling your story. Continue doing what you're doing. It is important work that you're doing. So please, please continue it, and wish you nothing but success and hope to connect with you again.
Fantastic. Really appreciate it, Kenny.
Absolutely. Well, folks, we'll leave it there. This has been Kenny and Paul. This has been the Leading from the Middle podcast. We'll talk to you real soon.